Welcome again to the SundayGorilla Mens Bible study. I'm Brother Thomas Lee Harris III, and we are going to jump right into this topic, and that is, what is addiction? Let's jump right in here. Let's not play. Okay? I have in front of me some drugs. This is a prescription something. Some pills and alcohol. Yes, alcohol is a drug. It's a liquid drug. Okay? The pills, whether the cocaine, the heroin, the crack, the popular drugs, these are drugs. All right? And when we hear of addiction, we automatically think of these things. Or we're quickly to think of these things. But also I have here food, some gambling, lotto balls, a knife, people cut, and also on this side we could call this the intangible, thing that you really can't see that people are hooked to, and that is, say, something like pornography. All right? Addiction, it runs wide. But when you go to the clinical, the technical people, the scientists who have been studying addiction, they come up with one consistent theme and definition, and that is that these things, this is so important what I'm going to say, please write this down, lock this down in your mind, that these things, the drugs, the food, the knives, the pornography, the things that we call the addiction, the professionals, those who've been studying it for years, say that these things are just symptoms of the problem. These things are not the addiction. I know that is crazy sounding to you. What did I just say? That the crack is not the addiction. The heroin is not the addiction. The medicine is not the addiction. The pills are not the addiction. The alcohol is not the addiction. The food is not the addiction. The gambling, right, the lotto balls are not the addiction. The computer is not the addiction. These things are symptoms, the professionals say, are symptoms of a greater problem. And if you don't take care of that greater problem, you'll never stop the use of these things. Okay? All these are just, when they mean symptoms, are just indicators of a greater problem. The pills, the liquids, the alcohol, the food, the cutting are just indicators. They're just signs. They're just warning lights that there is a greater problem. They're just symptoms. And the reason that the professionals and those that study addiction came up with this is that addiction in itself, and this is another thing, write this down. Addiction in itself, the problem of addiction is spiritual in nature. Yes, the scientists say that it's not a physical problem, totally. Meaning that they can't just issue a pill to the person to fix the problem. So they're calling the problem spiritual. Meaning its indicators are in the physical. And when they go in to look for it, they can't find it. They can't find it in the cell. They can't find it. They only find the indicators of it. Because, spiritual, what we think, first of all, churchy. And for those of you who are religious, it does have to do with church somewhat. Spiritual meaning on a godly plane. But the scientists and the psychologists that came together when studying addiction was the term spiritual malady. What they found out in studying the workup to a person who they diagnosed as being an addict, they say the workup, the pattern of outcomes or results are almost duplicate to that of a physical type of disease such as a cancer of the lung. So not only is addiction a spiritual matter, they're saying that it is a disease. Now this is deep. If you want to get your pen, write this down. They're saying it is a disease similar to a disease that attacks a physical part of the body, whether a cancer attacks a lung or leukemia attacks the blood. You understand? Cirrhosis eats up your liver. It is a disease. Addiction in itself is a disease. Now here goes the crusher. But the disease of addiction attacks a person's thinking. Woo! Huh? Think about what I just said. The disease of addiction attacks a person's thinking. So that means that the doctor can't just give you chemotherapy to your thinking. He can chemotherapy your brain, but your thinking is that spiritual part. The brain is the physical, but what the outcome of that, now we're talking about spiritual. That's what they mean by it's a spiritual malady. They know the disease is attacking your thinking, but it's not necessarily attacking your brain. And that is, so check this out. If I find out that I'm an addict, and say I find out when I'm 40 years old, and after some sitting down with a psychologist and some doctors, they tell me that I've probably been an addict for years, and the disease of addiction attacks the thinking, that means for years, all of my decisions that I made in life, honestly, truly, are subject to review. Because all of them were influenced by the disease. Quick example. A person quits a good job to get a different job that pays more. A person who's an addict with the disease of addiction attacking the thinking, watch what happens. The disease wants more. The good job that they have actually probably was perfect for the person. But when a diseased thinking says, if I get the other job for the sake of more money, that means I can get more physical substance. You understand? It's just doing that just to get more. It's not what you needed. That's just the addictive thinking. So that's why we see that a person with everything, $1 million, educated, and you see him on bum row, because the disease of addiction, it attacks the thinking. And in order to get rid of the spiritual problem that's causing these physical manifestations or physical indicators, you have to combat it with a spiritual program. And the spiritual program includes some physical steps, some physical regimen. Okay? And that's the heavy thing about addiction that most people get lost on. When you start talking about spirit, first thing they say, whoa, that's God. But the reason why millionaires, multimillionaires can't go to the doctor to give them the pill and this problem that we see on TV goes away because of the spiritual nature of it. You can't physically remove addiction from a person like that. They have to deal with the spiritual thing first, because remember, these things here are just indicators. And I know you're scratching your head. The crack, the cocaine, the heroin are just indicators that a person has a problem. And because of the physical consequences of using these things, we'll look at a person, oh, they're a crackhead or they're an alcoholic, and we just study if you just look at the indicators or the substance, if you just study the substance, you'll never deal with the problem. And that's the heavy thing about addiction that people struggle with. They think if I take away, right? If I take those things away, the person will be okay. Partially. If you eliminate these things, right, so they don't have any means to get it, the spiritual part of this is still working, meaning they're still thinking about it. The obsessive, they're thinking about it, and they're thinking about a way to get it. So they'll pick up other things to substitute until they get these back. Okay? Especially in the drug game, if you just take away the alcohol, the person's probably going to jump on the pills. You take the crack away, they're going to use the medicine. Because the craving inside is caused by a spiritual problem. And if you don't deal with the spiritual problem, with a spiritual program, and I'm not just saying a church program, oh, I went to the city choir saying, not a church program. This is where you have to go deeper and find out spiritual programs that work on implementing spiritual principles into a person's life in a daily commitment, daily, to deal with this problem. You're wasting your time. And we see it every year, every day, millionaires with problems that they cannot control. The money, no matter how much money they have, they can't go to a doctor and say, can you get rid of this problem for me? It doesn't go away like that. It's spiritual in nature. And the smartest people on the planet have proven that. They can't figure it out. Because the spirit realm requires a commitment from the person. And to deal with things on a spiritual level. Amen.